So welcome to the third week for our 3MT training and that challenge, the competition on that will be February 12th. This is just, again, some information, good things for us to keep track of, and also some tips for us to remember for this week. This week, you're focusing primarily on revisions and additional feedback and practicing. So the drafting is largely done-ish, depending on where you are. And this week, you're getting that feedback and you're also practicing. And I highly recommend practicing in spaces where you can breathe and feel comfortable. I know that it's intensive sometimes when you're practicing, trying to get things down, but also know that if you're pacing yourself well, and we'll talk more about that, that you're going to need to be able to breathe in between your sentences and not move at a too fast of a pace. You want to be able to make sure that people can follow what you're saying. A couple reminders about the dates, and this will not be the only time I give you these reminders today, but the preliminary rounds, those are February 6th and 7th, 3 to 5 p.m. Kimmy sent out a doodle poll. That doodle is asking you for which dates you can speak on or present in. And when we get that, get who can go where, we'll send all that information out and you will get a date that you can present on. How's that? And hopefully your preferred date. And there's the challenge itself, February 12th, 5 to 7 p.m. Just know that we will be sending out additional information as that time nears as well. This is by invite only-ish in that we keep it, as I mentioned, kind of tidy still. We're in the Longs Peak room. It's a lovely space. We have great food. We have tables with tablecloths and lovely conversation. So it's a great space for people to continue to gather to talk about the great research and communication that we do here at CSU. And so invites have gone out to, let's see, Graduate Student Council, to the Graduate Education Council, which is all the research associate deans and folks who support that. Yeah, Emily, I see your hand up. You have a question, feel free.
Yes, hi, Christina. I was just looking for the doodle poll, and when you said that it had been sent out, maybe it was in the process of being sent out, but where was that? Is that on the Google Classroom or to our emails?
Kimmy,
I have emails. Let me make sure that it got to you. I see that most people have filled it out already, so I apologize if it didn't go to you. I'll fix that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for letting us know. That means also anybody else who's either watching this asynchronously and has not received the invite or didn't know that one went out, please look and check your email. Please let us know if you didn't receive it, or just let us know what dates. You don't have to do it through Doodle. You could just email us in the process and say, by the way, these are the ones I can attend, and that kind of shorthands it. So
yes, please.
Awesome, good question.
And it did go out Friday, the 31st at 10:54 a.m. And I do see that you're on there, Emily, but I will go ahead and re-forward it to you. And anyone else that needs it, just let me know.
Yeah, sometimes I think things go to like spam folders, or I don't know if your inbox is like mine, but I started calling it the archaeological dig, just because I can get through those top layers, and then anything that I miss that's further, like if I get swamped in a day, sometimes I miss an email and it's gone into the sedimentary layers of my inbox. So just let us know if you need us to send it again.
Yes, I can definitely identify with that, but I do see the email in my I see it now, so thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, you're most welcome. I know it's easy for us to bypass and miss things, and I always appreciate the helpful reminders. And that also goes for if you email me and you don't hear back, I appreciated folks saying I'm getting this back up to the top of your email inbox. So just so you know. All right, and that's where we go for our doodle for the preliminary round, just the reminder. And so again, those are in the Laurie Student Center, and those will be 3 to 5 p.m. on Thursday and Friday this week. So for our schedule and where we are, this is, as I mentioned, revisions and practice. This is kind of where we are with the preliminary rounds. One of the things that we'll do today is we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the the criteria by which you're going to be scored. You'll be able to see the scoring rubric and system through the preliminary round, so you can get a sense of how that operates. But basically, it's just I think it's out of 10 for each one. Each one of the categories has a score, and those get added up. So it's a pretty simple score sheet. And then, of course, then next week is your final cohort meetings, and then that competition, or technically it's called the challenge, ultimately, I think, at CSU. All right, so again, practicing. And as I mentioned, you know, getting and incorporating feedback, giving feedback as well. This is part of that professional development. It is not always easy to receive feedback. It is also certainly not easy to, by the way, to give good, high quality feedback. And so just as a reminder, we talked about this a little bit last week, and reminding you that there are different types of feedback. Most of you will probably not be doing corrective feedback, but you'll probably be doing something that is directing someone's eye and giving them some pointers, or you're going to be, kind of having a conversation and kind of a back and forth. You may be doing a little bit of kind of, this is my take on it, and it feels a little bit like an assessment, but you don't want to be judging or grading each other's work, right? This is about supporting one another in ways that provides feedback so that people can hear. And sometimes that means, if you're like me, figuring out what's the way to soften it just a bit. We've talked about, there are things like feedback sandwiches, right, where you kind of give the good points, a little bit of the criticism, and the good again. That you don't have to do that, but just know that if you go in hot and heavy, sometimes people can get a little defensive. So you just want to make sure that you are speaking to the person in a way that they can hear, and that your feedback lands well. And one of the best ways to do that is to start with what is working well, right? What is, and what do you appreciate, and what do you want to continue working well? And then what is it that's kind of that you can see that might help it work better, right? And then as you're practicing, just a reminder, breathing from your gut and pacing your speech so that folks can hear you. If you feel like you're going too fast, chances are you are speaking too quickly, but that's something else to get some good feedback from your colleagues in your cohort, to just say, how's my breathing? How's my pace? You know, am I connecting with you? All those things that you need to be doing in the presentation mode. Just get some feedback on that this week as well. That judging criteria, as a reminder, and I've put highlights on kind of the key terms of what it is that you get scored on. And those are clear background and significance. So what's the context in which your work kind of comes about, your research project has manifested? For some folks, it's probably pretty easy. You're like, well, a lot of people have some sort of understanding, or family members who have suffered from dementia or Alzheimer's, that kind of context where you can give kind of a context that lands with people. But it could also be that your background and the significance of your research is highly specialized, and people might not have a lot of experience with circuit boards or kind of new or cellular level kind of processes. And so the question becomes then, how do you talk about that research question and that background and significance in a way that helps them understand? And so maybe providing some analogy or a metaphor, something that works at that level. Also thinking about, again, for my friends and colleagues in the liberal arts or humanities or social sciences, where sometimes that background and significance and the importance, it just should be apparent, because of course everyone, loves art or storytelling or those things, but really helping folks understand kind of the significance of what you're doing then in graduate school to move things forward, right? Why that kind of additional kind of specialized focus. Also clearly describing the strategy, the design, if there are results or kind of the outcomes or what is produced, and then what it is that those findings are, what they do, and then the conclusions, outcomes, and impact. And I think the impact is really helpful place for knowing that you want to go to as a kind of a storyteller, like what's the impact of this? And people want to understand through that process. So I'll show you some slides in a little bit that take you through kind of a logic of what it is that a research project has done, and you can kind of see how it lands on impact visually. And then the last, thinking about communication, engagement and communication, we scored on the clear delivery, right, and appropriate to a non-specialist audience. So in your groups this week, I highly recommend that everyone pay attention to specialized discourse or language. We tried to get it so that we had folks who were not in the same disciplines in the same cohort, right? In the same cohort, is that right? Yeah, same disciplines, not in the same cohort. There we go. However, we do have one cohort where I know that there are a couple from the same program, and that's okay. We did our best, and just know that you're going to have to be listening for when your colleagues are speaking. Do you understand what they're saying because you have that specialized knowledge or background? And if you were, imagine being somebody else from a non-specialist audience, imagine being a historian, for example, would you understand what it is that they were talking about? This PowerPoint slide being well-defined and enhanced, we'll talk about that in a moment. And then it needs to enhance, by the way, the presentation, not the slide itself is enhanced. And then that you have enthusiasm, right? Convey enthusiasm, and that you're able to capture and then maintain the audience's attention. Please note that this is just inevitable, but you want to be thinking about where it is that you might be presenting in any of the lineups, in the preliminaries, or if you make it next to the final challenge. But if you're in those kind of middle spaces, if you're at the beginning, right, it's easier perhaps for you to capture an audience's attention because, wow, they're fresh, right? But after 3 or 4 3MTs, they're going to be a little bit less fresh. And then they're looking kind of like towards the end, and we try to do 10 to 12-ish and keep it right at that level. But if you've got only 1 or 2 more to go, you kind of rebound. And that's just the nature of kind of how it is that we have attention spans and thinking about that. So just make sure that you're thinking about, like, present to the just like you would with the grant writer. Okay, so if you're writing a grant proposal and you know that it's going to a funding agency, it's going to be read at like 2 o'clock in the morning before people have to get up for 5 hours and to talk about your research and whether they're going to fund it or not. You want to make sure that your proposal works at whether they're reading at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and fresh, or 2 o'clock in the morning and not so fresh. And so you kind of want to do the same thing with your 3MT talk. You want to be able to capture them if they are fresh and you're set for presenting early on, or even if you're in that middle space, right? So just make sure, think about it that way. Here's some advice on slides. We haven't talked much about slides, by the way. This comes from the University of Sussex. In fact, both of the examples that I'm bringing forward right away come from British universities. So they have some suggestions at Sussex that I just thought were kind of clear and just helpful for us to follow. Just remember that less is more. If you've got a lot of text, if you have text heavy slides, which I tend to do, I mean, look at this slide alone, it's just super text heavy. If you tend to have a lot of text on your slides, just know that in a 3-minute challenge or 3-minute thesis competition, that it's going to distract perhaps from your talk. Readers can read or listen, but it's hard to do both. And so you want to have a lot more kind of visual that's available, kind of representative of what you're talking about, rather than having them read your slide. Those personal touches, something that can allow for your audience to understand your research. It could be something that is particular to your lab. For those of you who are in veterinary sciences and you work with pets, those are really easy. You can be like, this is Joey the dog, whatever, and you can put in some personal touches. We had one of our, Ghislaine won 3rd place last year in the competition. And she works with, she's a biomedical researcher, and she works with pregnancy and something about heat and loss with cattle. And it was pretty general and pretty down to the cellular level, but she had a cow that it was this kind of really cute visual image of a cow that she named Bessie. And then she just talked about Bessie. Everybody understood, right, and could land on Bessie. You had a visual of Bessie, which was super cute and engaging. And then she had the kind of repetition of talking about what happens to Bessie and gestation and heat and things like that. Just so that your creativity is going to drive interest. So don't rely on your slide to convey all of your message, that it should really complement what it is that you're talking about. as I just mentioned, Ghislaine talking about Bessie, the cow, and talking about then her research back and forth. They complemented one another. Work your message, right? So think about how your slide might be able to assist with that format and delivery. We'll look at some slides again where there's a logical flow from left to right on those. And then ultimately that it needs to be legible and clear and concise. And for this, you need to be thinking about the space of the Laurie Student Center kind of screens. Those screens are those large, kind of television screens, but they're not going to be huge. So just note that you're going to have a kind of a mid-sized screen space. And so that you want to make sure that people in the both the front and the back, right, could be able to see what it is that you're talking about. Some things for you to think about. This comes to us from a blog, and it's a doctoral candidate who did a 3-minute challenge at the University of Bath. And this has a great kind of flow of information talking about something that's quite complicated, by the way, and sets the context and has an arrow that just moves us from where we are now to the research that's being done and then to something in the future. If you're talking about the impact and you don't yet have all your findings, something like this could work really well, where you're able to predict based on what it is that you already have, what it is that you know. You want to be accurate and clear, right? There's no making up on what it is that you're doing, but this would be one way that you could present something that's quite complicated, but notice that these are accessible images, they're hand drawn, which also kind of thinking about your personal kind of flavor, like how it is that you present who you are. You want to be able to think about taking what's quite complicated and abstract that you all have worked so hard to be able to understand in your graduate work, and then be able to distill it into concrete images and concrete examples so that non-specialist audiences can grab onto what it is that you're talking about. And here, this is oranges versus crude oil, and can we reduce the usage of crude oil by using plants? This is an image of Bailey Wade, and this is Bailey presenting at this Colorado State competition. So those have judges who are not usually from the universities and as professors, but usually they're administrators, or they can even be, in the past, they've been state senators. So it depends on who it is that the Colorado group is able to get to judge that year. But they're usually administrators, kind of executive folks, or senators and politicians. And this is Bailey. Notice they have a huge screen there for that presentation. But you can also see that her slides take us through what it is that she's working on, which is an app that has to do with folks who have diabetes and experience poor balance and nerve challenges, and that what the impacts are on the brain. So she has this technology that she's working with. Most of her work is right here in this upper right quadrant. But what she does is she gives us the background and the context. She gives us a description then and a story of someone who is experiencing poor balance and who can be helped by this new technology and being able to identify what portions of the brains are being affected. And so that kind of lost years of life, that's where her technology and her work, her lab's research, is hoping to make some changes. And she won first place in the state, by the way, with that presentation. This is Scott Wrigley's slide from last year, where he did go to regionals in state and he placed third in state. And again, think about the kind of simplicity of this slide, and that there are arrows directing so that he can refer back to certain elements of the slide and can point to it during his talk, and then help us understand what it is that he's talking about. He also used some great analogies, like he talks about how certain things, I think, sold on Amazon at a certain time of year are associated with, but that it's funny and made up, right? It's not made up. There actually is an association, but it doesn't really, there's not a causation. So he's kind of schooling through his slide and through his discussion, the audience on how it is that we should understand the difference between those things and the gut microbiome in relation to heart health. All right, so those are the slides. I'm going to give you a reminder of a couple of things. One is Calendly. I know that Kimmy sent out her Calendly to be able to set up meetings. And so there are times that you can set up for meeting with either Kimmy or me. Kimmy has more available hours this week than I do. But if you want to have a one-on-one half-hour meeting conversation about your work, happy to do it. So we have office hours this week. So if you want some feedback from us as well about your slide or about your presentation, we're happy to have those conversations. Again, Kimmy is a 3MT veteran and an EPR fellow and longstanding behind-the-scenes contributor to CSU Rights and in the Journalism and Media Communications department. So super helpful. And then just a reminder that you can find this recording as well as slides and additional information on the Google Class. So look for that. Enjoy your week 3 of practice and conversations. I'm super excited about seeing you on Thursday and Friday for those. And by the way, I think on Thursday, Nancy Levenger, if anyone knows Nancy from the chemistry department, she is a University Distinguished Scholar. She's amazing, and she's going to be the MC for the final rounds. And so she just wants to come and see the preliminary round on Thursday. So just know that she'll be there, and reach out if you have any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing and stop the recording and figure out how to do that. Stop that. All right.